Guys, today we're going to be breaking down the loot from Sundered Doctrine. This is, of course, the new dungeon with Heresy, which arguably has one of the coolest exotics Bungie has ever given us, that being Finality's Augur. Today, though, we're going to be breaking down the legendary weapons that are dropping from this dungeon. This includes the hand cannon Unloved, the shotgun Unvoiced, the scout rifle Unworthy, and the trace rifle Unsworn. And yes, every single one of these weapons are ribbed for her pleasure. Now, to kick things off with these weapons, we gotta talk about this origin trait. Subjugation. Weapon adapts to targets. When dealing damage to weak targets, your shots explode. To strong targets, the target becomes exhausted. And to guardians, the weapon's flinch resistance increases. Fellas, this is a very strong origin trait. Hell, even Mossy Max came out and said that Subjugation is power creeping primaries. It gives two of the best PvE primary archetypes free explosive payload on every shot, and every 4 shots on the trace, for a 10% buff to critical damage on minors and elites. And we can confirm that. From our testing, the bonuses to weak targets, both minors and major enemies, is pretty insane. You're essentially giving any weapon with this origin trait free explosive payload so long as you're shooting red or orange bar enemies, which is like the majority of everything in Destiny 2. Now, we actually have an artifact mod called Deep Alchemy, where weapons with the Subjugation origin trait gain stability and reload speed for a short duration when hitting any targets. These weapons are also overcharged when this modifier is active. Oddly enough, when we were testing this with Deep Alchemy, this actually hurts the origin trait, as the hand cannon would only trigger the explosion every 2nd or 3rd shot. So be warned if you're using Deep Alchemy, guys, could be actually hurting you. And hopefully Bungie addresses this bug soon. Mossy Max even caught this in his own playtesting. Now, for the become exhausted portion and reduce flinch against guardians, this too seems to be bugged, or in the least too inconsistent to proc, or perhaps it's just not even noticeable, which I think it should be. Again, for those that are not familiar with exhaust is applied to, say, an overload champion after they are stunned, and it reduces their outgoing damage by 10%. Now, the only other 2 sources in the game outside of the artifact perks for exhausted seem to be Subjugation and the Psycho Hack origin trait, which is actually the origin trait present on the Witch Queen weapons. Now, there's a couple of things that we're trying to figure out here. Number 1, what is quote-unquote strong targets, specifically for Subjugation here, where it states that to strong targets, they become exhausted. And number 2, is 10% even going to be something we notice? Again, so far on the testing side of things, this one's been inconsistent. On top of that, the reduced flinch against Guardians was also something we didn't notice as well. Now, despite those hiccups, I want to be very, very clear. This origin trait is one of the best origin traits Bungie has ever given us. Just the first part alone, where your shots explode, already make this top tier. With that being said, though, guys, let's now dive into the drops from this dungeon. First up, this is your layout for Sundered Doctrine. The first encounter drops the hand cannon, the trace rifle, and the scout rifle, as well as all the armor pieces. The second encounter drops the trace rifle, the hand cannon, and the shotgun. And then the final encounter drops everything, including the exotic. Now, the only difference between the normal version of this dungeon and the master mode version of this dungeon is that the master mode drops artifice armor, which, let me just be frank, in my opinion, not really worth it. We know we're getting armor 3.0. Armor is about to change in a big way. So much so that I think all of the armor we currently have is going to get scrapped. So my main focus is going to be grinding for these weapons. In terms of time, the final encounter may actually be the best. Solving the puzzle really is not the fastest. The second encounter, you could instantly nuke by putting in a kill sign. That one's not that bad. And you can easily get the one phase, especially with the fire tape. But Karev, in my opinion, would be extremely fast, and you have access to all the drops. And keep in mind, this dungeon is farmable all season long. You can farm it as many times as you want. You can do these encounters as many times as you want, and you will get drops. Now, to kick things off, let's look at the hand cannon Unloved. This is a strand heavy burst hand cannon, making it the first of its kind. In that third column, we have Dragonfly, Outlaw, Hatchling, Rapid Hit, Killing Wind, and Heating Up. In that fourth column, we have Kill Clip, Closing Time, Frenzy, Elemental Honing, Paracosm, Affinity, and Tear. Now, we actually have a video coming out on Elemental Honing, as well as the Heresy godrolls. That'll be out probably in the next day or so. But essentially, Elemental Honing states that dealing unique elemental damage grants this weapon a stacking damage bonus, and the bonus is increased for kinetic weapons. Now, when you deal elemental damage, this grants you 1 stack of Elemental Honing, and it lasts for 20 seconds, and it can reach a max of 5 stacks when using all 5 different elements. Now, the timer refreshes each time a stack is gained, everything, but it cannot be refreshed once you reach max stacks. Now, kinetic damage does not give any stacks. However, it actually gets more damage. Now, the breakdown for this is that times 1, it's 2.5%, times 2 is 10%, times 3, 20%, times 4, 30%, times 5 is 35%. Now, one day when we get a kinetic weapon with elemental honing, this will actually cap out at 40% increase in damage, but for Unloved right here, 35% is the max you can get, which is pretty nice. However, it is a lot of hoops to jump through, guys. It's really good if you're rocking something like Prismatic, and with it already being present in that top slot, it does make it easier to rely on those other slots and those elemental damage types. Now, Paracause of Affinity, which is actually an OG Roots of Nightmare perk, is also pretty good. This provides a 20% damage increase for 6 seconds when you land a kill from any source that is matching the energy type of your weapon. So in this case, Strand. If you're rocking like a Strand-based build, or if you even get kills with the weapon itself, then boom, you've got 20% more damage. The difference between this and Elemental Honing is that Elemental Honing just requires you to deal damage, whereas Paracause of Affinity is kill activated. Now, the other new perk is Tear, where precision kills cause nearby targets to become severed. This is a 40% decrease to their outgoing damage for 10 seconds inside of PvE. This is a very solid Strand perk, almost like another version of Slice, but it doesn't require a class ability to be used, but instead it needs a kill. Now, what is the role that we're looking for? I've gotten a few, fellas, but I haven't exactly locked down what I would deem a god role. I think in that third column, Dragonfly, Hatchling, and Rapid Hit are really good. Rapid Hit is also a very solid one, considering this is a burst fire hand cannon. You'll reach multiple stacks very quickly. In that fourth column, I think Frenzy is a good one. Elemental Honing if you're leaning into that, especially if you're rocking Prismatic. But again, you have to be conscious of the different elemental types that you're rocking. And if you find yourself rocking a Strand build, maybe even a Strand heavy, with this weapon already being Strand, then Elemental Honing is a wasted perk. In that case, you want to just go with Paracause of Affinity, which is what I recommend for the other one. Tear is also a really good one that I think can't be overlooked, considering activities like the Nether, where you not only want to kill them very fast, but you also want to apply some level of debuff. And a 40% decrease to enemies' outgoing damage is tremendous, especially if you're bold enough to rock the Glass Cannon boon inside of Nether. Now, for my PvP players, I think Rapid Hit Kill Clip, even though that's pretty basic, is probably going to be the one I want. Rapid Hit helps me in the middle of my gunfight. Kill Clip can get the easy 2-tap. Yes, you do have closing time, but I'll just take Enhanced Kill Clip. Give me that extra half a second, which between that and the forgiveness of the reload speed will allow me to proc it, find my next target, and then I can get the blasting. Now, let me just say this about burst fire hand cannons. They have received a number of buffs inside of PvP, but they're still not that crazy. Like even the Trials burst fire hand cannon just hasn't seen much usage in the meta, and that's because no one really likes using this archetype. This archetype, in my opinion, has been the preferred choice for PvE, but not so much for PvP. The next weapon on the list is Unworthy. This is an arc rapid fire scout rifle that drops from all the encounters. Its third column, it has Rapid Hits, Firefly, Rewind Rounds, Ambitious Assassin, Heating Up, and Keep Away. In that fourth column, it has Rolling Storm, Volt Shot, Precision Instruments, Paracause of Affinity, Frenzy, and Zim Moments. Now, I know seeing a scout rifle and say something like PvP is a rare thing, but I can't help but look at that Keep Away, Precision Instruments. This is the same combination that's so deadly on Fang of Your Ute. Don't overlook this one, guys. Give it a go. I urge you, if you do get this role, to just consider it. Try using it inside of PvP. You might be pleasantly surprised. Now, in terms of PvE, got some pretty interesting combinations. We've got Firefly, which you could pair there with Volt Shot, essentially allowing you to have both a solar explosion and then arc jolting after you reload and shoot again. What makes this one interesting is that it actually allows you to deal 2 separate damage types, which means if you have another weapon rocking Elemental Honing, well, there you go. Rewind Rounds, though, is also present here, which I really only would use if I'm trying to go for maximum stacks of Bolt Charge without having to reload. For something like Bolt Shot, that of course would run into conflict with Rewind Rounds. If it had something like Rewind Rounds and jolting feedback, that would have been really good. But I do see the vision of Rewind Rounds, especially when we start talking about Rolling Storm. Rolling Storm is a new perk, guys, where Final Blows grant Bolt Charge, and while you're amplifying, Final Blows grant additional Bolt Charges. Now, this will grant you 1 stack of Bolt Charge per kill and 2 stacks while amplified, with the Enhanced granting 3 stacks of Bolt Charge while at 0 stacks when you get that first killed, and while amplified, you'll grant yourself 4 stacks of Bolt Charge while at 0 stacks. The point is, you could do Rolling Storm in combination with Rewind Rounds, and you could be sitting behind a Storm's Keep barricade, and you could be blasting. Now, a more typical loadout would be something like Volt Shots in that 4th column. Paracause of Affinity and Frenzy are also present here, but the role that I'm looking for is Rewind Rounds, Rolling Storm, especially considering it's a rapid fire weapon. We could hit those max stacks of Bolt Charge very, very fast. So that's my PvE role. Now, our next next weapon to look at is the Unvoiced. This is a void slug shotgun. It drops from the second and final encounter. Its third column, it has Envious Arsenal, 4 times the charm, killing wind, lone wolf, redirection, and destabilizing rounds. Fourth column, we have Frenzy, Vorpal, bait and switch, closing time, elemental honing, and demoralize. Now let's just start there with demoralize. That's a new trait. It states that precision final blows cause nearby targets to become weakened, which is pretty interesting considering that in that third column, we have destabilizing rounds. So now you got like this weird thing going on where a precision final blow would cause nearby targets to become weakened, and then at the same time, you have destabilizing rounds, which will cause those targets to become volatile. So it's like a double whammy. And keep in mind, destabilizing rounds just got a hefty buff. Its cooldown between activations was reduced from 4 seconds to 1.5 seconds. It'll now grant volatile rounds for 2 seconds if any targets are hit by that volatile burst from that initial final blow. And it's supposed to just be 2 seconds, but it actually lasts for 5 seconds. Really not sure if this is intentional or not, but the point is, on this particular slug shotgun, for running and gunning, especially with no backup plans, I'm looking for that demoralized, destabilizing round roll. And we've seen void slug shotguns, most notably Slayer's Fang, in action in things like Grandmaster Nightfalls. They put out, man. Now, for something a little more typical, bait and switch, 4 times the charm, or Envious Arsenal, either one of those is going to be fantastic for DPS. And for bait and switch procs, I may actually even lean a bit more towards Envious Arsenal. Now, redirection is a perk that I think has been overlooked for a very long time, but it actually got a hidden buff with the launch of Heresy. A Reddit thread was actually just shared out where redirection is supposedly now stacking up to 30 times, with it giving 2 stacks per red bar enemy that is hit, and it only consumes 2 stacks per shot. And you're still getting that 100% buff in damage. So something to keep in mind on this roll, guys. What makes this especially interesting is that you could double up here. You could do redirection with another damage perk, whether that be Vorpal, Frenzy, or bait and switch. Now for my PvP players, Lone Wolf, closing time all day long. Let me just say, we're kind of already in a hidden slug shotgun meta inside of PvP. Nothing catches another shotgun user off guard faster than a good slug user. And that roll right there, Lone Wolf and closing time together with max range, is gonna pop. So definitely lock that down. Now our final weapon to look at is the Unsworn. This is a strand trace rifle that drops from all encounters. And I actually got a good roll of this one. In that third column, we have Tear, Thresh, Stats for All, Shoot to Loot, Subsistence, and Reround rounds. In that fourth column, we have Hatchling, Detonator Beam, Killing Tally, Target Lock, Bait and Switch, and Elemental Honing. Now let's just focus real quick on Detonator Beam. Dealing sustained damage creates an explosion around the target. Now from our testing, this seems to be pretty strong, but nothing like game breaking. It seems to take about 30 shots to proc, and it deals 10,666 damage here on Carl. Now I still don't know if this works with a perk like Shoot to Loot, as we don't have that roll yet, but considering it works with kinetic impacts, I would assume that this explosion AoE could proc Shoot to Loot, which is present there in that third column. Now, the enhanced version of this perk decreases the time or the amount of shots it takes to proc that explosion. But let me just say, guys, this perk paired with the origin trait is very nice. You're talking constant explosions, no matter what you're shooting at. And in my opinion, that's what makes this trace rifle special, is Detonator Beam with the origin trait, paired with a number of options in that third column, whether that be Tear, Shoot to Loot, Rewind rounds, or Subsistence. Could you go a more traditional route in that fourth column? Maybe Hatchling, Killing Tally, Target Lock, or Bait and Switch? You could, but again, Detonator Beam, that one right there, guys, that's the unique one on this weapon. It's just more kabloomies. Who wouldn't want that? Now, I just want to say that this may be one of the best trace rifles in the game right now, simply because of the origin trait. Considering that essentially gives these weapons explosive payload against trash mobs, and now that it's available on a trace rifle that fires this fast, fellas, that's nutty. Now, it doesn't proc every single shot, but around every 4 to 5 shots will proc that explosion. But considering how fast it fires, you can just see right here how often you're getting those explosion rounds. So for my Warlock mains that are looking for a good trace rifle to use with Cenotaph, here it is, fellas. And this season, with artifact mods like Horde Shuttle and Unraveling Orbs, Unsworn is popping off even more. So that's it, guys. Those are our rolls for the Sundered Doctrine dungeon weapons. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Again, check out our guide if you haven't already. This is a dungeon that you can farm over and over, so getting the god rolls shouldn't be too difficult after using code Aztecross on all GamerSup products. Plug? I had to do it. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.